Right. 10 years ago, we were on our way to our first Grand Slam since the 40s. We were also witnessing the birth of the Leinster team as a European powerhouse, because they went on to win the Heineken Cup in fairly spectacular fashion, driven by man-of-the-match performances throughout the competition by Rocky Elsom. Obviously, the head coach was Michael Cheika. Stars of that team included Brian O'Driscoll, Shane Jennings, Gordon Darcy, and they're all reuniting for a massive night to celebrate the 2009 Heineken Cup team. It's a gala evening, and all of the surplus monies raised from the evening is going to be shared between a charity chosen by the 2009 players, the current Leinster Rugby charity partners, and the Leinster Foundation. So they launched this event yesterday, and to help launch it, they gave us some access to Leo Cullen, and Leo and Eoin sat down together, and here's how the conversation went.
Leo Cullen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yep. Great time of year. Lovely weather outside. Living the dream in many ways.
It must be like peak rugby season kind of comes along with, snow and terrible weather all the time. But this is, looking out the window today, it just feels like it should be the off season.
I know. I actually had that thought. I had a second or third layer on today. I was like, I'm going to take this off. It was amazing to think. So middle of February, and yeah, for us, like, we're working away sort of behind the scenes at the moment. It's always a great time of year, this Six Nations period, I think, for Leinster, with what we hope always is a lot of guys away on international duty, and you get to work more with a lot of the younger players, and so that group is working very hard at the moment. Another big game for us against Cheetahs on Friday night, so another opportunity for a lot of our guys. So it's a great time of year, but it does feel like we've escaped winter this year. Last year we played in this block, and then we had there was Storm Ophelia, and then there was the Beast, or whatever that was called, with the snow, and we had a game that was called off against Scarlets, and it was quite a disruptive period. So in comparison, it's incredible that this year, it's sun out and people in t-shirt and shorts in the middle of February. It's amazing.
It's very unusual. We are here because we're launching the Champions of 2009 Gala Dinner. As it says on the tin, it's all about 10 years ago, that incredible Heineken Cup win. It must feel like yesterday.
It is strange to think back. Like, it is hard to think back when you're in the sporting bubble, and it's just always like the next game that's coming up. And but 2009. It does seem like a long time ago in many ways, but like there's the memories of that season are so clear in my mind. So it was an unusual season. It was very mixed in terms of the pool campaign, where we struggled really to get out of the group. We'd been pretty much written off after those December games where So we bombed a couple of chances in the home game here against Cast in round 3, and then lost away in round 4, and then we were picking up all sorts of tags after that game. So to come through and actually qualify from the pool was hard work. And then there was the Bloodgate game in the quarter-final. There was such a big fallout from that game. We were oblivious to most of it at the time, but to think of how close that game was, the 6-5. And Harlequins missed a few kicks during the game, and anyway, it was such a big moment in that club's history for very, very different reasons. But how close we were to being out of the tournament at that stage. And then there's the game in Croke Park against Munster, where I remember in the press before, where literally nobody gave us a chance in that game either. So to come through and face Leicester Tigers in the final, who obviously had a bit of history with, having played there for 2 years between 2005 and 2007, and had some great memories over there. I was very fortunate to be involved in a very competitive group of players, but eventually to get over the line, it was amazing. Such a different time in terms of the expectation and the sense of belief. We were very brittle as a group, I think, in terms of confidence, self-belief, and not having really delivered on enough of the big days. So to finally take that step was a huge moment for a lot of people at the club. Most important thing for the club as a whole, as an organisation, was such an important step.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Like, when does that brittleness change to a solid confidence? Is it the Munster game?
I don't know. I think there was still a lot of doubts in the final. The way that game I thought we were lucky in many ways because Leicester had played in the Premiership final the week before against London Irish and won, and winning just takes that little bit of a competitive edge away from you, and they were probably stumbling into that final. I remember what it was like because when I was in Leicester, we had played in the Premiership final and beaten Gloucester the week before the European Cup final, Heineken Cup final, and I was in Twickenham. So Leicester had played in the Premiership final in Twickenham, then the following week went back to play against Wasps and had hammered Wasps in the last round of the Premiership. Prior to that, Wasps had just been sort of bubbling in the background. But Wasps were too good on the day in that 2007 final, and Leicester were just lacked that bit of an edge. So that's what I'd hoped going into that 2009 game. Maybe Leicester, would they lack a little bit of an edge, but ultimately we just about did enough to win the game, even though it was a scrappy, untidy type of game, which was the case with a lot of our games that year. I thought we were scrappy, untidy, but just managed to get through, took chances when they came along, and it was there was a lot of, I suppose, will to get us there and get the results that we were after, but it was quite untidy in reality, I think, if you're looking back on those games.
So I guess we'll get into the Six Nations in just a moment, but just to kind of stick with Leinster for one last thing, it's going to be Ulster in the next round of the Champions Cup at the end of next month. We were just speaking at the top about 2009 Munster. The old provincial derbies really kind of go to another level when they're in Europe, don't they?
I remember that Ulster game in 2012. Ulster had won an away quarter-final that year, another provincial derby when they beat Munster down in Thomond. So we know on their day, Ulster are a hugely dangerous team. But I remember the build-up to that final 2012 and the hype that goes with that. And I remember it's so clear in my mind, the drive into the ground in Twickenham, and you see two Irish teams in Twickenham. It's an amazing occasion. The blue and the white literally circling around the flags, and it's the sense of colour you get in some of those European days that are so clear, and that image in my mind when the teams are coming out and you see the flags and the split, I can picture the same image in Croke Park and with the blue and the red. So they're pretty special days.
Obviously you're going to be going up there, or you're going to be coming up against them, and you're going to have a familiar face coming up against you in Jordy Murphy. I guess the question that's been on everybody's lips today is Jack McGrath going to be one of those familiar faces with him next season?
Good question. Reality is there's for whatever reason, some of the other provinces I think are looking at some of the players that we have here, and so you can argue about the merits of what's right and what's wrong. For us, we were just trying to create a place here that players can be as successful as they possibly can. So in the group environment, but also as individuals. So if they produce the right behaviours, they get picked, and hopefully go on and get picked at the highest level as well, whether that's with Ireland or even beyond, with the Lions as well. You mentioned Jack has obviously gone on and done that. So there's always bits going on behind the scenes with the squad, and that's something that we don't tend to air in a public domain, out of respect for all the different people that are involved. But it's something it goes on. I think continue to go on. I think it's a good reflection when we have these questions. I think quite often it's a good reflection on a lot of the good work that goes in the system here in terms of trying to produce players. And for us, that's probably the thing that we can control. And then ultimately, it comes down to players, what they actually want to do in terms of some of the decisions that they make. Sometimes they make decisions. Sometimes, obviously, it's the club makes a decision. Maybe there's not a space for certain players, but ultimately, those conversations are best kept, I think, in a private domain. When there's announcements to be made, and when there's a clear story or a clear picture, those things get announced. So, out of respect for the individuals.
Yeah, in a general sense, I wonder, is there a question at the moment that Leinster are almost a victim of how many great players they're producing at the moment, that there's so much depth in every position, and ultimately the RFU is looking at what's actually best for the national team, and obviously from your perspective you're thinking what's best for us here at Leinster?
The main thing for us is that we continue to try and produce players, because I think identity is important. I think that we're very lucky that we have a lot of players that have grown up in the system. Talk to some of the players. What's their first memory of Leinster? And it's one of the players said, "Oh well, I was an 8-year-old playing at half time," and so I want the players to inspire those 8-year-olds that are out there to want to play for this team. So Leinster being this team. So that's an important part. I think that kids that grow up and come through the system and they've something to aspire to. They've seen it on the very various different routes there are to get there, whether it's through some of the schools or it's through some of the clubs. It's real. It's you can do it. That's the pathway. I've seen it from all these different examples. That's a more important focus for us. A lot of the other bits you can't control. There's other factors at play, and with other clubs' approaches, agents, etc. So that's just part and parcel of the business of sport that we're in. Not sure was rugby ever supposed to be professional, but it is now. It's a business. So there's the reality side of that. And some guys get opportunities to experience a whole host of different things. And depending on what stage guys are in their careers, maybe that's an attractive proposition. But for us, what do we control? We control trying to make this place to a place where people want to play, people want to aspire to play for. Sometimes that's trying to inspire Scott Fardy, who's maybe sitting on his couch in Australia and thinking, wonder what this team Leinster will be like playing for them, and he comes across and makes a big impact and really buys into what we're trying to do here as a team and has a massive impact on a whole host of other players because of some of the experience that he's picked up, and because he clearly has shown a desire that he wants to come here as well. We're lucky that he's decided to stay on.
It doesn't seem that it doesn't take too much reading between the lines here at all, but it seems from what you're saying there that you want Jack to stay, and ultimately there are different things that you can't control in terms of what he's feeling, in terms of what the RFU is feeling. Am I correct in assuming that?
I think you're assuming a lot there, so okay. I don't know. As I said, there's out of respect for the people that are involved. I just don't think it's a conversation for a media event. I think it's something that takes place behind the scenes, and we'll see how it plays out.
Fair enough. We just want to wrap up as well on the Six Nations. From a coaching perspective, I'd like to get your take on what we seem to be hearing from Joe Schmidt and the camp at the moment, which is that they're slightly mystified by what's actually going on so far in the Six Nations, that they can't quite figure out why this Ireland team is performing. Have you ever gone through anything like that, and can you sympathise with how difficult that must be?
I feel like we go through that all the time, because even when we win games, sometimes you don't perform particularly well. So sometimes the results hide the actual performance. You look back to the England game, which I was at in the Viva, and it was fine margins in that game. It was such an intense game. England had this, build this siege mentality. Everyone was talking up Ireland. There was this expectation Ireland were going to win the game, and it just felt like there was a trap being set here. England, I thought, produced a good tactical display. Ireland, if you think some of the tries that were scored, that were, possibly a forward pass for one of them, when Johnny May kicks the ball ahead, probably a forward pass in the build up to that. Stockdale, as he's about to collect the ball, he's played, and if he's managed to gather that ball, and then Ireland are chasing the game and they concede a try later on in the game. So it was such little fine margins in that game. And then in most campaigns, if you had a bonus point win away against Italy and a win against Scotland, that would be deemed pretty good, because there's maybe this bit of pressure building. And ultimately there's been, Ireland have tried a huge amount of players as well in the campaign, so it's going to be hard to get a cohesive performance off the back of a lot of changes. But ultimately they lost a very tight battle against a very good, strong English team who hit the campaign at a million miles an hour in a lot of good form, and then Ireland have backed it up with 2 wins since. So I wouldn't be predicting or painting such a picture of doom and gloom. I think Ireland have lost a game against England that people have been building up that they would win, and since then they've gone away and won against Scotland, who have been on a good run of form, particularly at home again in Murrayfield. And Ireland picked up a bonus point win away against Italy. I was played against Italy away before, where Italy took the lead in the last 10 minutes of the game, and Raj got a drop goal off the kick-off. We kicked off, regathered the ball, and he coolly slotted a drop goal to win us the game, and you get out there with a win. And sometimes the Six Nations away from home is a little bit like that smash and grab. So I think it's set up well. I think a lot of players have missed the last couple of rounds. I think a lot of guys will come back, I would hope, for the last couple of rounds. And it's hard to know exactly what sort of form France are in. Moments of brilliance and moments where they're not so good. But game on Sunday, then can Ireland probably spoil the party against Wales? And Ireland are still very much in the hunt for the championship, depending on what happens in a few of the games. So I wouldn't be as doom and gloomy.
It's an unusual sound to actually hear somebody who's not doom and gloomy around this Ireland team at the moment. So you don't think that there's a possibility that we have peaked at all last year, that even the performances of the likes of Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton are anything to be concerned about just yet? It's just they're working their way into top form from a 2019 perspective.
Yeah, I think it's more to the fact there's been a lot of chopping and changing, a lot of disruptions, little niggly injuries that has been picked up along the way. So I think once get a bit more cohesion in terms of the selection of the team, I think Ireland will be a good place. You look back to the New Zealand game, it's not that long ago, it's in the middle of November. So, and I think all the provincial teams are in good form as well. So, no, I think the competition is good across the board, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a turnaround in the mood in the last two rounds.
Leo Cullen, thanks a million.
Leo Cullen yesterday helping to launch the 10-year anniversary of the 2009 Heineken Cup win, the gala dinner event. You can get more details on the tickets at LeinsterRugby.ie. That's pretty much all we've got time for on this morning's show.